Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. That is so gross sounding. I cannot believe you're doing that. Gross.
You know what's delicious?
Ugh.
I'm in this thing with honey Dijon mustard from Sprouts.
Yeah,
It's
you're
so
eating. You're eating cinnamon toasted broccoli with honey Dijon mustard.
I'm going to go ahead and put that to the side right there.
Oh, thank God. I've never heard you chew that loud in real life. Like, I've never heard you slurp
Broccoli's loud.
like that. No, I've been around you eating broccoli. I've never, that was like extra loud so the listeners could get a taste of it, and it sicked me out. Ugh.
Well, I just had to finish up that broccoli. I figured I might as well
You're like, this will be a good intro. Let them into our part of our lives.
It's about living a healthy, whole lifestyle.
Oh, look
Which is
at
what
that.
we're going to talk about today. 10 signs of wholeness. Number 1, eating broccoli. Eat your broccoli, kids.
Oh, wouldn't that be funny if we were like 10 signs of wholeness and then it was all about food? That'd be funny.
No, but we are going to talk about 10 signs of wholeness.
Yeah.
And I am very fond of honey Dijon mustard from Sprouts.
And those two things have nothing to do with each other.
Nothing whatsoever, except that I have broccoli stuck in my tooth now.
Yeah.
Any other fun things you want to tell our listeners about before we jump into this magnanimous episode that will be a map for life to tell them whether or not they're failing or winning right now?
I feel thankful for our listeners. I feel thankful for you. And I feel thankful that the sun's out.
Oh, yeah. The sun is amazing. We went on like a
bike ride yesterday.
15-mile bike ride or something.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's not as big of a deal when you say 15 miles and then you add to it that
It was an electric bike.
we have electric bikes. But I'll tell you what, I pedaled
That's
for part
funny.
of that way.
I pedaled for part of that way too. Yeah. You were like the best husband in the world. That's one of the kindest gifts that I think anyone's ever gotten me. Most thoughtful, because of the ways my leg muscles will cramp up sometimes. It makes working out hard. Sometimes going for a walk, I don't know if I'll be able to get there and back for things. And you found a way. Yeah. You found a way to
create experiences outside together.
Yeah. So we could be outside having activities. And this way I can pedal as much as I can. And I don't have to pedal if my legs hurt.
The moral of the story is love is creative.
Yeah. Well, also the moral of the story is there's always a solution, because I kind of had just given up.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, there's a way.
That should be a sign to wholeness, not giving up all the time.
Actually,
Give up,
that
McGee.
should be.
Yeah,
that should be. Well, I feel really sad about our list of 10, because what I really wanted is a list of like 20, because this is not comprehensive.
Not comprehensive, but we'll give you the first list of 10.
Yes.
That will get you into going, okay, I feel, because here's some of the reason why this has come up today, guys. So when people have been listening in on the podcast, some of them like have been listening. You guys have been listening for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And I had someone recently be like, I didn't realize that I had grown so much.
Oh.
Until someone was like, you've changed a lot. And they were like, I don't feel like I have, but I have been implementing everything that's been going on that I've been listening to inside of the podcast and stuff, but I'm just in my own little world. And so I think that some of you who have been listening, as you listen to the 10 signs of wholeness, might be like, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm have grown a whole lot.
Or I'm growing in that one. Or I'm growing in that one. And here's how you'll know that you've grown. Because you won't listen to this list and only hear what you're failing at. You'll recognize. And this is, I think the journey to wholeness is such a spectrum. And I want to start off with like my goal in heading towards wholeness is that I'm becoming more human. I'm becoming more present in my body. I'm interacting with people with more presence. I'm not hiding as much. But that doesn't mean that I'm a better human. Like actually, the more I've grown in wholeness, the more I've grown in humility.
You're not?
Well, what I'm saying
is...
I'm
a better human than you. If you're growing in wholeness, it should actually...
be growing in humility.
Right. And it should actually eradicate
the need to have hierarchy.
To think that I'm better and have hierarchy. Ooh, sign number 1.
If that's not what we said.
I know, but it is sign number 1 now.
It is sign number 1. Because the more you go on the journey of wholeness, the more you can accept that you're not perfect.
Yeah, that you're messy. You're accepting a sense of your humanity, and you can see everyone else's humanity.
Yeah, that is actually down in one of ours. So
we'll get into that.
All right, let's start. The beginning, number 1 step that you are becoming more whole.
You're becoming self-aware in real time.
Yeah. So I think of, again, wholeness is like a spectrum. So when I started, I might recognize an emotion. When Justin started, when we got married, he would recognize he was feeling emotions about a month after they started showing up in his life.
That's pretty close to reasonable. It might have been 3 weeks. Give a guy a break here.
Yeah. And so you really had no idea what was going on inside of you. You were reacting, but you didn't know. And I would be like, I think something's going on in there. And you'd be like, no, there's nothing going on. And then about 3 to 4 weeks later, you'd be like, you know what? I realize I think that this has been going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. That has a little bit of nuance to it as well, because part of me was like, oh, I was in a war of that doesn't really matter. Like, that's not really that big of a deal. Let that go. And then like, so what does matter? I don't know what matters then. So I think there's a mix of, I also began to say that the things that mattered did actually matter. Yeah. Mixed with an because then that created an awareness. Then I could even be aware. Yeah.
But you didn't go from recognizing your feelings every 3 weeks to being able to recognize them during the day that you're having them. That's not actually how the process goes. And so I'm trying to say, like, if you're listening to this, the goal is not that you have conquered something. It's that you are like on the spectrum going towards the goal. So I think anytime, I remember being like, oh, every time I recognize that I'm having shame a little bit faster than I did the last time, or every time I'm recognizing that I'm feeling fear a little bit faster than I did the last time, then I'm growing towards wholeness. Yeah.
And I think that when I look back at, my own journey, I remember being like, it only took me 2 weeks to get there. It only took me a week. It took me a week in between that situation now to actually feel it and then communicate about it. And now
sometimes you can actually say in the moment, I'm feeling anxiety right now.
Yeah. And I've gotten, after 13 years, a lot quicker, pretty quick at saying like, hey, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling scared right now. But that was a muscle that grew over time. And that was definitely pointing towards, I'm becoming more whole.
Yeah. And I kind of like this conversation because I'm like, yeah, there's ways that you've really learned to recognize it. And there's still ways that you don't recognize it. Emotions that you have right away. And there's both. And I would say the same with me. I'm way better at recognizing my emotions. And I still have counseling sessions where I realize, oh, there's a lot of pain under there. Oh, that's a surprise that I didn't know that happened. And so I can feel very confident that I'm growing while still seeing that there are pockets that aren't there yet.
Yeah. I love that. So let's talk about number 2. Do you want to go or shall I?
You go.
You have more peace in your ability to hear feedback. Now, feedback is devastating for people oftentimes. It brings up emotions of shame,
failure, defensiveness, love's going to be removed, I'm going to get punished.
Rejection.
Yep.
And so
or misunderstood, or anger, or, so many things.
And there's something that when you start to find peace inside of feedback, it means like, oh, something inside of me is settling into my own identity. There's an autonomy where I feel like I don't have to be something for someone. I don't have to please them. We look at it when we get feedback and we go, this isn't a conversation about my value or my self-worth. This is just straight feedback. It doesn't,
Which is, we're talking about having shame resiliency, where, and again, that belief, like if you believe it's okay that I'm not perfect, then if somebody gives you feedback that you're not perfect, you can be like, it's okay because I'm still worthy of love. I've had to confront this a lot in this season for me because there's a lot of confrontations that I've been in the work world. And so I've had to think through like, oh, I used to always say that I was lovable because I could make peace with everyone really easily. Mm-hmm. You know, that was my idea of what being good was. And so then I've been like, wait, can I be good if I'm instigating conflict a lot? Mm-hmm. Am I still worthy of love? And that's the same concept as if somebody's confronting me on something, can I still believe I'm worthy of love, even if what they're saying is true, or even if it's untrue? And I'm you know, sometimes people are giving you feedback that isn't accurate about you. And so can I feel like I'm lovable if I'm not understood? And can I feel like I'm lovable if you're seeing something I don't see about me?
Yeah, it's a really big one.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I would say there's some people that I still can't receive feedback well from.
Yeah.
And there's other people that I've gotten really good at it.
Yeah. And that's okay. That if there's people in your life that you're having a difficulty receiving feedback from, it doesn't mean you're not
growing towards wholeness.
It just means like, hey, all these other areas I am. And that's a really big deal.
Yep.
So let's talk about number 3. You find yourself having more honest and direct conversations.
Which is literally leads me to the second point of what I just said, where I'm having more confrontations. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I'm actually growing because I used to have peace with everybody because I made everybody feel good, not because I was honest about everything.
Honest and direct conversations can be real scary. And it, you know, in the process of having these conversations, it doesn't mean you're not moving towards wholeness if you feel emotions and fear and stuff like that. Like you're finding ways to heal and stuff like that in your process. But the fact that you're doing it and it becomes something that's more consistently part of your life is a really big deal. You're also developing safety in your culture and your environment through doing so. And that's part of why it's a sign of wholeness, is because I'm being authentic and honest with the people around me. I'm not sitting in hiddenness about what's going on inside of the relationship or the experience. I'm allowing room for them to have big emotions, and I'm not letting fear drive how I'm relating to life.
Yeah, and honesty is it really builds a lot of intimacy and it builds safety. And so I think there's all kinds of honesty. You can be honest, like, hey, I felt insecure after you said that. Or one of the ways that I just had a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about something that I went through that was hard for me. And I just saw something in their eyes, and I blurted out, wait, are you judging me right now? Which is a way of being honest. Like I thought, oh my gosh, are they judging me right now? And then they responded, and that wasn't what they were thinking at all. And that was very helpful. But it's that idea of I can be honest. I can literally just ask people what they mean by something.
Which also comes from self-awareness, right?
Yeah, I felt like I was being judged. I was aware of that in the moment, and I was able to communicate.
And ask about it.
Yeah, and a lot of my honesty is in asking questions. Are you feeling frustrated at me right now? Or I share how I'm feeling. Like I realized the other day I made a joke, and one of my friends commented back and was like, hey, was that totally a joke, or was there a little bit of truth in that? And then I had to like sit and think about it and be like, was there truth in that? And then I had to come back and be like, you know what? There was a little bit of an edge there, because this is actually this emotion that was going on under the surface, and I didn't consciously do that. But I'm so sorry. You're right. But it's that idea of I can be honest.
Yeah. And what's cool is
I can be a truth teller.
What happened there also is they gave you some feedback when they investigated, and you were able to sit in the midst of the feedback and go, let me process that instead of just being like, no. It was, all right, I'll sit here.
Which is such a sign of healthiness, that when people give you feedback, you actually take time to process it and think about it, and even ask questions with other people. You know, like I had a friend, I gave some feedback, and she was like, I don't see that at all. But she was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask several people and see if that's something that they see in me that I'm missing. And that's a healthy way to try to figure out.
Yeah. I really like that. How about the next one? You call it.
Like it's my turn to call it?
Yeah.
You're quick to take ownership for your part in a matter without taking too much. Which is literally like what I just shared about that story. When they confronted me about the joke, I instantly decided that I would take ownership for my part in that.
Yeah. So there was a self-reflection and then and you being able to be like, yeah, there is a piece of that wasn't a joke. Here's what that is. Sorry for the way that it came out.
Yeah. I think oftentimes healthiness is being truthful about what is. Mm-hmm. To me, wholeness is we're calling what is, that honesty. And so I can call myself on what is. Oh, I didn't. I just me and Pizzi had to work through a conflict, and I was like, you know what? I sounded intense or like defensive in the way that I responded. I'm just saying what is true. And there's something so liberating to the human soul about saying what is true, even for yourself. Like once you get past that shame and that like self-hatred, if you could just say what is, I mean, in so many of our sessions, we've met with thousands of clients. Just getting somebody to just say what is true is liberating for them.
Yeah. And you can feel them be like,
yeah.
Okay, I said it.
I lied. I had victim mentality. I was defensive. I was acting out of my fear. Whatever it is, actually just owning it is so good for the human soul. And again, I often think if I'm thinking about wholeness, I'm thinking I want all of my humanity to come together in one piece. When I think about the opposite of wholeness, I think about how we dissociate and separate out a bunch. So we have all these different pieces of us that aren't connected anymore.
Yeah.
And so like lying, and I'm not even saying conscious lying. I mean, conscious lying is part of it, but even just not saying what is true is true. So being like, I was thinking about this the other day. I have a friend who was complaining about how sick they were feeling. Mm-hmm. But they also know that they could eat a certain way and not feel sick. And so they were like, I just feel powerless to my body, which all those are real feelings. And I was like, but let's just own that you just don't want to choose to eat differently.
Yeah.
Like, let's just own that. It's okay. If you want to, even if you want to own, like, I'm using food as a coping skill and I don't want to change it yet. That it's just saying what is real, saying what is true. And just owning the real thing instead of making it like, oh no, I can't do this and I can't do that. And it's, like, let's just own it.
Yeah. I think that kind of reiterating, even taking ownership in relationship matters, friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships, whatever, being able to part of taking ownership, saying like, this is the role that I played, no matter how big of a mess this is, no matter how wrong you were in these areas, here's what I can say, like, hey, I'm sorry for my part, is part of what makes that being whole is that we're not in relationship with shame inside of that.
Because shame divides us.
Right.
Shame separates us from ourselves.
Right. And so being able to say, hey, this here is mine is also a powerful posture to be in. Like, because now all of a sudden you're not a victim inside of circumstances. And to me, part of wholeness is that I'm exiting out of victim mentality. Right? I'm no longer living in this victimization of my own personal life. And it's very powerful.
The other thing that I will say about taking ownership, for some people, what is healthy is for them to not take ownership. We've talked about this before in when we talk about fawning, which is a trauma response.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people out there that apologize for everything. That was literally me in my childhood. I had coaches and teachers constantly be like, stop apologizing, because I feel emotion coming up. One of the way I was always apologizing for everything. I'm like, I'm so sorry. 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 They'd be like, stop saying you're sorry. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Like, it was like an over apology, over ownership. That's
not been lost on me seeing you do that.
Because you've seen it as well.
So much, especially in the early years of our marriage. This is one of the things that drove me the most nuts about you. Not because I thought you're bad. I'm like, why in the hell are you sitting here apologizing? Whether it's to me or to other people, it's like, what is happening inside of this?
And so when we're talking about taking ownership, we're saying ownership for what is true, not ownership for anybody's feelings being hurt ever, not ownership for things you didn't do, like what ownership for what is true. So like, if I hurt Justin's feelings, I can sincerely feel sad that I hurt his feelings. I don't have to say I'm a bad person, but I can say I'm sad that I did something that affected him negatively. And I can apologize and own what my role is without owning everything about what somebody else experiences.
Right. Because there's a lot inside of people's experiences at their own personal triggers and history and their own pain lens that they're viewing it through. And we're not responsible for their own history and their pain lens.
Yeah.
And so to try and take ownership for the enormity of pain that is oftentimes not realistic to the circumstance is, one, it's futile to do so. And it's, again, over responsibility. It's over ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important that you actually learn to take ownership in a healthy way.
And I think that with that concept is that in all relationships and experience, there are two people
that are co-creating.
And that's part of wholeness is in this type of, on ownership, like is ownership understands that there's co-creation.
Yeah. I was thinking about, one of the moment that I remember feeling like I was growing in this skill. I had a confrontation with a girl and she had blamed me for a lot. And there was a lot of messy things between both of us. And I wanted to take ownership for my part. But I remember when I sat down, I was very clear in how I communicated. I know that we co-created an unhealthy dynamic together. I know that these are the things that I contributed to that. And I'm sorry for that. But I know that both of us were part of making this system the way that it was. And that was truthful because it's truthful about every relationship. But it was I felt really like it was one of those times where I was able to own my things. I'm sorry I did this and this and this, while also being like, but I didn't ruin our relationship.
Right.
I didn't create an unhealthy culture. Like in that dynamic that I'm talking about, she was scared of doing confrontation with me. And so I took ownership for the things I could take ownership for. Like I'm so, at that point I had counseled her. So I was like, I'm really sorry. It'd be really hard to confront somebody that had counseled you before. So I'm really sorry for the confusion that it created for you, that I had done heart healing work with you and I felt like an authority to you. And so when I confronted you, it felt scarier and that I wasn't aware of that dynamic. So I apologized for that. But then I can't apologize for her not dealing with her fears about confrontation.
Right.
That's not mine. That's hers. She's powerful. I can't apologize for her not having a voice about her fears of confrontation. I can't apologize for her choosing to hide instead of communicate about confrontation. Yeah. I can't apologize for her not choosing vulnerability. So I'm in there not blaming and not saying you need to take ownership for your stuff because you can't make someone else do that. But I am aware, and that is a healthy view of a relationship. I bring my stuff, they bring their stuff.
Yeah. Well, what about number 5?
Yeah, go ahead.
You regularly experience compassion for yourself and others. And I think that that's a really huge one. So what that points towards is I'm in the process of humanizing myself and others around me. And that's part of wholeness, is that we begin to see the common humanity that exists. We go back to early on when we talked about you getting, what did you say early on? I forgot what. My brain just had a brain fart. Oh, there it goes. Anyways, we're regularly looking at people through this new lens of, I could be you just as much. There is no hierarchy here.
There's no hierarchy here.
Right.
Like me and you both have, we both are living in a painful world.
Yeah.
And we're both trying to survive. Like we both, and that's true for every single human. Every single human experiences loss, grief, abandonment, fear, shame. Like we all experience
have reactions to that.
Yeah. And some of the reactions might look prettier and some of them might look uglier. So like when I'm in that confrontation with that girl who I see has fear of confrontation, I might have learned how to confront past that fear, but I can remember that feeling.
Yeah.
I can put myself in her shoes and be like, she didn't have somebody teach her how to confront. So I can have empathy for her. And empathy doesn't mean that I give her a get out of jail free card.
No.
And that's the confusion. That if you have compassion for people, that means you allow them to treat you away. That's not true. I have compassion for me, but that doesn't mean I think my behavior is okay. And I can explode and get really frustrated. And then I can be like, why did I do that? Okay, I was in a trauma response and my trauma was very real. And I have a lot of compassion of why that showed up. And yet I'm not going to just say I can have explosions whenever I want, because there's a compassionate reason for them.
Right. And I want to specifically add that to this, because I think I want to just, I guess, elaborate. So how would I say this? I'm going to say the statement. You regularly experience compassion for yourself and others while holding yourself and others accountable.
Yes.
And I think that that's a better way to, reiterate this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, and it goes to, what is my first thought about somebody? When somebody does something ugly, my first thought is, what is that hurting kid in them? Mm-hmm. Where did they learn how to protect themselves like that? What are they afraid of? Like the more I grow in wholeness, the more I see every human is trying to survive. Mm-hmm. So when you're gossiping about me behind my back and I find out about it, it's that understanding of like, this is what you've learned to do to survive. This is somehow
so I don't have to
protecting.
I don't have to look into the person and see them in a devalued sense. Like,
I'm not villainizing you.
You're a worthless piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. The aggression intensity, you can go, oh, I can totally see why that's happening for them, why they're reacting, why they're trying to protect themselves, why they're, like all this stuff that's happening. So it's a sense of like, I'm still holding value for their humanity.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to have a conversation about them and confront this, because this isn't okay that
exactly.
they can keep speaking poorly behind my back.
Yes.
And through the gentleness and kindness, there's still confrontation inside of it. And to me, that is wholeness. And I see a lot of people swing to the very opposite side of compassion, where it's just like, oh, that's okay. It's so sad that they're in their situation. Of course, they beat someone up and then stole their car and then did all these things. And get out of jail free card. Nope. We have compassion now.
Yeah, no, there's got to be and that's actually one of the things on our list. I don't know if we're there yet, but it is. It's the next one. You see nuance throughout life.
There it is.
You can hold duality. You can see both compassion and confrontation in the same way. You can see that people have both good and bad. This is one of the things that society is trying to dehumanize people right now, which is you are what you believe and it's good or it's bad.
Yes.
If you're conservative, you believe liberals are bad. If you're liberal, you believe conservatives are bad. And we're losing our ability to see humans have nuance. And like everybody has good and bad in them. Every single human. And we want to reduce them to an opinion or a belief, and we want to villainize right away instead of our ability to see that. And we talked about that even in politics, like, oh, you're vehemently protecting being conservative. You're vehemently protecting being liberal. You both think that that's what's going to protect the world. Yeah. You both think that is good for people. You both want good for people. You both like, and so that idea of like, most people, and I'd say 99%, I think there are some people that have like totally given themselves over to darkness. I don't think we encounter them most of the time. I would say like, like maybe people who are running children prostitution rings, like those dark places that you can get of crazy abuse. But for the most part, the humans we're interacting with are like the 99% of humans
that are just kind of like, they're doing life. They're messy in some ways. They're reactive inside of their pain. They want to do right. They want to love other people well, even though when they don't know how to do it, they actually feel a conviction about the fact that like, oh, I hurt that person. I'm doing these things and I keep doing what I don't want to do. There's actually, again, I guess the word is conviction. There's a conviction inside of their soul, and they're wanting to not do stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking about nuance in dating. I was thinking about like, if you have the ability to hold nuance, if you break up with somebody, you can say, yeah, there were some good things in them and there were some messy things in them. And there were good things in me and messy things in me. Our messy things didn't fit well together. Yeah. That would be a way to describe it. Now, if you can't hold nuance, you'd say they're bad. They're bad, and that's why we had to break up.
And you've now vilified and victimized yourself and vilified someone else. I think about that inside of friendships too. It's like when I review friendships that I'm not close to anymore, I look back, and because of nuance, I'm able to see the value in what was brought to my life, and I don't dispose of that value.
Yeah, so they might have hurt you, but you can still see, look at all of this.
Look at the ways that they loved me, and they tried their best, and they were there for me in these ways. And yes, this got messy, and yes, this was unreconcilable, this situation right here, but they still added to my life, and they're part of my story, and I can be thankful for those things.
So holding nuance is like the ability to be in gray instead of black and white. So like a black and white, another example would be like all church leaders are idiots.
Yeah.
And or church is the only way that you can know God.
Yeah.
Both of those are black and white statements.
Yep.
And nuance is a lot of church leaders have pain because they're human. Well, all church leaders have pain because they're human. And that is going to affect people. And also there's some really good things about being there. Both, like, that is a nuanced view.
Totally. Well, I was talking to somebody the other day specifically about the institution of the church, the institutional portion of it. And, they're in a process their own of like trying to figure out how to detox and deal with that. And I'm sitting there going like, actually, the institution was vital in some ways for my growth and my development and my interactions with God, where I met people who were filled with love and in their own messy journey.
Yes.
But like there for me, and I have vital, critical things that developed me and who I am. And then there's other parts of that institution that I'm like, and it's really destructive over here. And we have to be able to look at this destructive nature of control and judgment that isn't the heart of unconditional love inside of that space. And so, but I can do it. I can look at it and not throw out an entire thing, because it's not black and white. Nuance is now seeing the value of, and that's in people and everything else.
Yes. And even in your own season, it's not a good or bad season. It's a season where there's mixture of both.
Yeah, it's really, nuance brings such balance ultimately, and balance is so powerful inside of the journey of wholeness.
Yeah.
Let's talk about number 7. You feel comfortable expressing and receiving love. Now, I like both sides of that. Again, that goes back to the idea of balance. Because I know some people who are like, I will love you. I'll do whatever. I'll take care of you. And the minute you try to love them, whether it's financially or like taking care of them in acts of service, things like that, they get anxiety. They back off. They put walls up inside of it. And so there's not a total receptivity as well as giving away. And on the other side of the coin, I see the people who are like, all I do is let people take care of me. And there's very self-focused, self-centered. And it's very obviously very destructive inside of that.
And then there's way more reasons than that. Like I know we had a culture combo at the one of the businesses that I consult at. And several people said that giving affirmation feels vulnerable for them.
Yeah.
Feels so vulnerable. So they avoid doing it. And so there's lots of reasons that, I think about like the previous generations just never heard it, never did it. And I think it's brave to share love. I think it can be really vulnerable to love people extravagantly. And so it's that thing of, I'm comfortable enough that I can be affectionate.
Yeah. I remember even in my own world on the other side of the coin, where when someone would try and give me their time and attention, I felt this visceral reaction at the core of myself. I felt exposed. It was so vulnerable to actually be on the receptive end. I felt out of control. I didn't know whether or not it was genuine. I had questions of, are they wanting to take something from me? But throughout my journey, I've been able to come to a place of peace. Yeah. And be like, I'm just going to trust that this is a love that they have to give. I don't know if there's intentions or not. I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and let them do this. And I'm going to let myself, a lot of times when people try to love and give love to us, sometimes we can feel very small, like a little kid again inside of that. And I've allowed myself to be a little kid inside of those spaces. And it actually broke me out of a relationship with self-sufficiency. Yeah. Inside of it. And so, yeah, it's a difficult thing to do, but when you notice that you're doing both of those, it's a really, really big deal.
And it connects to, You're comfortable expressing and experiencing vulnerability. This one is funny.
Yeah,
you can watch people literally start to squirm when somebody else is being vulnerable.
Oh, when someone starts sharing,
and they'll be like, "Oh, you're fine.
How's the weather today?"
Yeah. People get so awkward when somebody's being vulnerable, and so weird. And the whole idea of wholeness is that we can be present.
Yeah, present with ourselves and present with someone else.
Yeah, it's almost like get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
Is this the connected life, Abby?
Yes, it is. That's me. It's you. It's me. It's you. It's you. It's me. I don't remember how that goes. But yeah, but the idea is wholeness means I am not running from my own emotions. I'm not running from your emotions. I don't feel like I have to fix things. A lot of these things are like acceptance. Acceptance of what is. Acceptance that I'm messy and you're messy and the emotions exist. Acceptance that I don't have to fix you. So much of the roots of this is like, I can love myself enough to be okay with you not being okay.
Yeah, when you talk about the sense of acceptance, it creates that peace. I am here. I'm here with you. I'm experiencing every part of this human experience. I think that that's where we actually come alive.
Yeah.
It's when we are in the moment, we are fully present with another human being. That's where the fullness of life happens. The gamut of emotions is expressed and experienced.
Yeah.
So I think part of wholeness, as a side note, I think 10 signs that you're becoming human.
Totally.
Is probably another way to say it.
We actually should call it that. 10 signs of becoming human. Yep. That's very, very true. The other thing is learning how to be vulnerable. And I've had to learn this. And there's a million moments where I get to choose over and over and over again. Am I going to share this vulnerable thing? Am I going to let you see? For me, I grew up so believing the way you're lovable is to be unaffectable.
Yeah.
Like, so if I always am fine with whatever you do and never show that you can affect me, then that is the best version. So I actually have to choose to let people see my insecurity, to let people see like my honest, my needs, my desires, my
difficulties,
flaws, my even like a lot of times in honesty is so connected to this. So a lot of times in conversations, like I was talking about that conversation earlier where I was like, are you judging me right now? Yeah. That's vulnerable. Because what I want to act like is, I don't care if you're judging me. I'm not judging me. I'm fine. But the truth is, I was feeling insecure because of the nature of what we were actually talking about. Yeah, so
you're revealing that there's an insecurity in the moment.
Yes.
And potentially you're about to hear,
if they are judging me.
Yeah, I am judging you.
But I also feel like so relieved. I like have this thing where I'm like, if it's negative, but I know about it, I at least know what's happening.
It eases my soul.
It does. But that ability to choose vulnerability, to choose, like one of the ways I choose vulnerability is to share emotions in real time.
Yeah.
So I might say like, Justin, I'm feeling scared right now. Or I feel like I'm about to be abandoned. All of those things are kind of combining all of them, right? I'm being honest. I'm knowing my emotions in real time. That is what is creating vulnerability.
So good. So good. All right. Number 9, you're comfortable setting boundaries. Boundaries can feel really difficult to do. It feels like, again, it goes back to value assessment. Am I bad for doing this? Will they think that I'm bad? Will they hate me? Will they have bad emotions about this? Do I have a right to actually create a sense of boundaries inside of my life? Should I be walked over? Is this too much? There's a lot of confusion when it comes to around this empowered sense of like, I'm going to create a boundary, because going back through our list, boundaries are developed really from being self-aware, knowing what we're feeling, knowing what we want, what we need, all of that stuff. It takes a risk. You're being vulnerable in setting a boundary because you're saying like, hey, all this other stuff doesn't work for me in the way that I'm being approached or the way that we're interacting or whatever. And so, yeah, it's deeply difficult. But when you begin to do that, I think part of wholeness is creating avenues that feel like you're really accessible instead of all in or all out.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm either kicking you all out, or I'm letting every part of your behaviors and your lifestyle come in and have its way inside of my world.
Yeah. And boundaries are I believe I'm worthy of having boundaries. It also is about becoming more human. So when I abandon myself for you, I'm separating from myself on your behalf. Mm-hmm. So when I'm letting you run over a boundary and I'm not being honest or setting something, then I'm disconnecting from myself. And the whole goal of wholeness is that we're reconnected to ourselves. And boundaries are meant to be like everything we're talking about in balance. I'm not going to just lock everybody out of my life so I don't ever have to be vulnerable.
Right. And going back on boundaries, I think about this because a lot of times people have misinterpreted boundaries and they've used them as a way to control everyone around them.
Yeah.
And create a big fortress. Mm-hmm. To me, they're like a bridge to my heart, and their boundaries are filled with vulnerability. Whereas some people use
boundaries to shut down vulnerability.
Yeah, to shut it down, to again create that sense of a fortress or a moat around your entire life, and that isn't what they're for. So, I mean, there's an exploration of what even boundaries are. Some people might be listening to this and they're like, I don't even know what a boundary is, and so that's something to be explored as a side note.
Absolutely.
All right, number 10.
You've adopted personal growth as a lifestyle. And this is what we talked about earlier. We accept that we're humans and that we're living on a planet where everybody's hurting each other all the time. And we're trying to learn how to interact and bump around while we're hurting each other and figure out how to become more like love and more like peace and more like joy and more like goodness and more like compassion and more like
kindness.
And we're trying to learn that while we're bumping into each other and all hurting each other. And it's that idea of I can have compassion for every reason I do what I do and hold myself accountable to growing.
Yeah. I think that the idea of growth is saying like, hey, I'm agreeing with the idea that I'm not a bad human being for having to actually develop. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a failure. Like when I just accept like, hey, growth is a part of my lifestyle. We're saying I haven't arrived somewhere. I'm not going to arrive somewhere. It's not about arriving at some final destination. It's about learning how to be in this moment right here and right now, and being willing to allow the work of love to continually evolve the way that I experience life and the way that I express myself towards life. And I think it's a beautiful, peaceful position. Like to me, the place of the deepest sense of peace is when I adapt to this concept right here. Personal growth is my lifestyle. And so that way, every circumstance, situation, experience that I'm having is just like, oh, that's so cool. I'm at such peace with this. This is revealing this to me about myself and about others. And I'm growing over here in this spot. And it creates peace that really transcends any understanding when that's just part of your life.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true. And I think that there's a place of choosing to be lifelong learners, like being okay. It's okay that I don't know what I don't know, but I can learn from everything. I had a friend who just made a kind of a messy situation, but I'm not even scared about it for them because they're a lifelong learner. Yeah. Because every time they make a mess, they learn from that. Yeah. And they transform and they change. And it's powerful. And so there's this thing where like I actually trust them in their life because I know that they are a lifelong learner. And so I'm not scared about the choices that they make because I know that they are learning.
I think about that inside of religion. Religion is supposed to be the place for growth and development, but it's actually the place that shuts down the most growth and development because it says don't make any mistakes in your journey of growth. And it's not possible to not be messy in order to grow.
So true.
Growth happens in the midst of our messiness.
Absolutely.
Because we get it out on the table, we're able to see it for ourselves, we're able to examine it through the lens of love, compassion, and we're able to go on a journey of course correction. But you can't course correct something that you can't look at.
Yeah. And I think about even like, I also think about this is a sign of wholeness. I watch a lot of people in addiction cycles. They'll get a lot of help and they'll do a lot of personal growth when there's pain. happening. Their partner wants to leave, or their family's done an intervention, or whatever it is. But when they're doing good, they stop personally growing.
Yeah, totally.
And I see this happen in marriages. Like they'll work really hard when it's at a crisis point, but when things feel fine, they're not intentionally growing. And a sign of wholeness is that you are growing when you're in crisis and you're growing when you're out of crisis.
Totally.
That when you're doing good and doing fine, and that doesn't mean you're always like running on a treadmill. It just means that you're still connecting to yourself and still checking in with yourself. When things are good, you still are on your team. It's basically like we're not transforming to get out of pain. We're transforming as a lifestyle.
Yeah, totally. And again, that's part of, if we were to call this 10 signs of
becoming more human,
that is the best sign. Like, hey, I'm human. That's all we're here doing is growing. That is the epitome of humanity, is we're here to develop and grow in the nature of love. Yeah. Period.
Absolutely.
So, oh my gosh, I feel more human already.
I know. I do too. I love it. I'm growing in all these. I think what's fun to be able to do is a podcast like this where I'm growing in all of these. And I wouldn't say I'm the expert in all of these. Every single one, I'm like, oh, I'm farther along on that spectrum than I was.
Used to be, yeah.
But and all of them, I also can see I have a ways to go, but I don't feel shame about that.
Yeah.
I just feel like, yeah. And I think it comes from this idea of mine that I live with, that is like, if at the end of my life, I'm 2 steps better than the trauma I came out of.
Yeah.
Then I won. So I don't have this idea that I should be able to get to perfect. I don't even think perfect is a realistic option for me. And some of y'all need to let go of that perfect idea and that perfect image that you have in your head about who you should be.
Yeah. I was thinking about imperfection in this moment because you were talking about it.
Crazy how that happens.
And I was standing here as we're recording this podcast, and my foot stepped back on this cord and it sounded like a fart. And I thought,
did it? I never even heard it.
I wonder if anyone will notice that.
That creaky cord
it'll be a very
fart.
Imperfect soundtrack if they hear it. They'll be are they farting in there? You're like, yeah, sure. Hey, by the way, speaking of the journey of growth and development, let's say this real quick. If you go to justinandabi.com,
justinandabi.com,
you can go to our Living Fully Alive page in our courses, and signups for that is going to start in January.
Yep.
And the actual class will start in March. But there's you can click on the Buy Now button on any of the options, and you can sign up to have an email sent to you as a reminder of when that actually starts, the signups for all that happening. We're really excited about that.
Yeah, that's the course that me and Justin have met with thousands of people as consultants. I've trained so many people who's are fully full. Their schedules are full. They have waiting lists. And we started a masterclass this year for people who want to be consultants, but for you to be in the masterclass. So
you have to go through Living Fully Alive. Yeah. And also a little addendum as well, little fun note. If you didn't hear it in our previous podcast, you can go to the Connected Life page on justinandabi.com.
I love this.
And there's a spot where you can write in your ideas for what you want to hear on this podcast. And if we choose your idea, we'll give you a shout out. Mm-hmm. Maybe other things, I don't know. But at minimum, you're going to get a shout out. And because we really want to hear what you guys want to hear about. I think it's really fun when people shoot me ideas randomly on Instagram and stuff like that, but that gets lost.
Yes.
That's a problem, is we've lost so many of those messages.
Also, if you have a story that you'd like to share of some growth in your life or family from listening to the Connected Life, we'd love to hear that too.
Yeah.
Email us in on that same email, the Connected Life page.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll put you on the podcast.
And maybe we'll bring you on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's fun. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Well, hey, that's all I got on my end.
Okay. We love you guys.
Yeah. Okay. We love you. Go away.